Hello and welcome to another Hangout on Air of the Moy Yat fan club. Today we have a special guest, Darren Leung, actor and the technical assistant for the main actors and crew of the Oscar-nominated movie The GrandMaster. Darren is the son of the Ving Tsun master Darren Leung, who also participated in that movie as a Ving Tsun consultant. We also have Jonas Bauman, Sifu Marcio Silva, Tiago Pereira, Master Nathaniel Rosa, and Master Léo Amura. Good evening, everyone. Léo Amura?
Hi, everyone. I'd like to welcome especially Master Darren Leung, which is represent a very strong lineage in the Ving Tsun family, and congratulate him for his work and the GrandMasters. So let's start right now because I think we'll have a lot of things to learn about what happened in the backstage of this great movie.
Thank you, Master.
Thank you.
Darren, any opening words?
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the introduction, Master Mamor, and for setting this up.
Okay, thank you. I would like to start to ask you, Darren, if you could tell us a little bit about your role in the movie, The GrandMaster.
Well, there's a role behind the camera and there's the role in front of the camera. So if you want, I could start from the beginning.
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. Well, it started off primarily as just as the trainer for Tony Leung's wife, and I say the trainer because officially my father is his sifu, and because my father's a little bit older, and he doesn't generally interact, for the heavy training with people. He teaches the concepts, and I would go in and I would refine and basically be the coach. So that lasted for about 6 months until we broke. Well, he broke his arm, and then the movie actually started about 6 months after that when he broke his arm again. And we shot for about 3 years. There was about a 1.5 year break, separated into several months here and there. And towards the very, very end of that break, they shot my role, which was his first student in Hong Kong. He actually comes up to what would appear to be my school, or at least the school that I'm running at the Restaurant Workers Association, interviewing. I interview him, his role anyway, his character, and he shows me what's what, and that's it. Well, of course, I also helped out with subtitles. I helped out with some of the translations and a little bit of the edit in the U.S. version. Participated in some of the publicity afterwards.
So in total, we're 3 years in making the movie?
Depends how you want to count it. The first time I got involved in the movie was the very beginning of 2003. And that was, we shot some green screen material for probably investor, a trailer, teaser, something like that. And let's see, we shot green screen material in 2002, and then early 2003 we shot something in Hong Kong. But I didn't really do much for there. I just sort of sat there and watched. They did some wooden dummy stuff, and then there was a break until 2008. Training for 2008, then shooting for 3 years after that. So really, it's more like 4 years plus a little bit here and there. There's always pre-production involved.
Thank you very much. Nathaniel?
So you need to adapt some Wing Tsun movements to the film?
Yeah, that's kind of a long road, because the actual fight choreographer, if you look in the credits, you'll see the fight choreographer is Yunhua Peng. I'm not sure if your audience is familiar with him, but he was the stunt coordinator for the Kill Bill series, the Matrix series, and and countless other movies. So he had a couple of guys who had trained a little bit of Wing Chun, but they were stunt guys primarily, and stunt guys are different from people who either fight or people who do this sort of thing for a living. And the director wanted us to show real Wing Chun. So the adapting, to answer the question, the adapting really was sort of a team effort, because Peng had an idea of what he wanted to do and what he thought Wing Chun should look like, but he's not a Wing Chun guy, and his stunt guys aren't Wing Chun guys really. So he would do something, and then the director would look at us and say, "Does that look right?" And we would have to sort of go back and forth and fix it until we sort of reached a compromise about, yeah, that looks like there's something we can accept as being, realistic. But, of course, everybody knows in a fight you're not gonna go for 5 minutes nonstop and nobody's gonna fall down, nobody's gonna die. So there were compromises.
I'm curious, Darren. So we see those fight scenes in the movie, and I always wondered how much did you have to spend to train the actor behind the scenes for just those 30 seconds of a fight?
It depends entirely on the director and the type of movie and the sort of standards that you want. In our case, the director insisted on having, an actor who was authentic. So I trained Tony traditionally. We trained him starting from, Zuling Tao to turning the horse to Qi Sao, Lap Sao, all the basic sort of techniques that we normally do and all the standard progression that we always do, just that we were doing it between 3 and 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, so that he could learn, all the way through how it's supposed to be. Usually when you do a movie, you say, the fight choreographer would say, okay, I want it to look like this. Or rather, the director would tell the fight choreographer, something like this happens, and the fight choreographer would put something together, and the director would say, okay, sure. And then they would drag in the actor, and they would say, do this, do that, and the other. And usually you have a stunt guy who does most of the technical stuff, and then you have the close-ups on the actor. So the actors generally don't do a lot of real training. Maybe calisthenics or, your basic stretching and kicks and simple things like that. But in this case, because he had to do virtually everything himself, we started from scratch.
That's interesting. Jones?
Yeah, I saw something interesting in this movie. When you have fight scenes, the director will usually focus on the feet. Then people then practice martial arts can appreciate the movements. Maybe the people doesn't practice martial arts cannot see all the details. So there was a demand of the director, or was idea of the fighting choreographer?
No, most definitely the director, without a doubt. It's a very good point. I'm surprised that anybody would even pay attention to that, because they say in a movie, at least in a good movie, no frame is wasted. You show everything for a reason, and so the feet, like you said, the footsteps are very important. The bagua, whether or not it's bagua or bazi or Wing Chun, those footsteps are very important, almost without exception. It's almost, you could say the same thing about drama. Every wink, every look, everything counts.
So just in the same question, can you tell me just maybe some actors gave you like a hard time and another actors was easier to train?
I would not say that anybody gave me a hard time. They were all very cooperative. Some of them might like to talk a little bit more and chit chat or something, but I'm not naming any names.
Thank you.
So, your father also had a very important role in this film as a Wing Tsun consultant. Could you share with us some stories about that?
Wow, some stories. Well, the main story is that he was there almost every night that we had any kind of action going on. So the director could turn to him and say, you know, hey, Duncan, is this right? You know, if I'm not there, then he's there. Yeah, and he's basically there, and we shot almost always exclusively at night. So, you know, we would arrive on location around 5 or 6 p.m. and shoot until, you know, daybreak the next day. That's sort of the main story. And a lot of times you're just sitting around waiting.
Thank you.
Was it even another opportunity to learn more about Wing Tsun?
Another opportunity for me?
Or for you to learn even more about Wing Tsun? You know, watching your father, watching, you know, trying to adjust all the movements.
There were some techniques that he would talk about, or that he would bring up, that we generally don't use. For example, there's when in the very beginning, when Ip Man finishes off the steel toes guy, he punches him through a gate, right? And so there's a technique which we call it a hammer hand, but it's similar to a gong sao, you know, like this, right? Except you have two fists, and you sort of crash forward, and the requirement for that shot was that you have to have this really like a sort of a blast, you know. It has to be a movement that's a blast. But generally speaking, aside from just a straight punch, we don't do a lot of that stuff. You know, there's a po pai chang, and we wanted to keep away from some of the more obvious things or repeating certain things. We didn't want to do a kick for the final one, so he did that one, and that was different.
Hi, Marcia.
Darren had some accident during the movie.
Did I or did Tony?
Yeah, during the movie, during the will help the guys and had some accident, or it's okay because okay.
Go ahead.
Because I understand the guys don't have any experience in martial arts or in Wing Tsun specifically.
Yeah, Tony broke his hand twice during the movie. Well, his arm, really, you know, right about here. The first time was during training. We were training, and I kicked, and it was kind of a freak accident, and he broke his arm. About 6 months after that, when we were finally shooting, it broke in the same place because it just hadn't healed properly. So that was sort of the big accident. You know, there's always times where some of the actors get a little bit tired, or if they have some back pains, or, you know, maybe the stunt guys get injured. It happens.
Nathan?
So the language behind the movie is kind of poetry. So this idea, it comes from the director, or the actors can put some ideas in there?
The overall movie is definitely director's. When he came up with it, nobody knows, because he only shares it in little bits and pieces. You know, people say that he shoots without a script, and it's sort of true. I mean, maybe he has a script in his head, or parts of the script, but nobody gets to see it until we're actually shooting. As far as people adding to it, as the actors adding to it, they might add to it in small ways, you know, as part of their character. but at the end of the day, it's the director's call. The overall arc of the story is his.
Thank you.
So there is a scene, and you have like a poetic fight, and they fight for a piece of cake or a cookie. So it's very poetic and very different. So the choreography team have some work in the scene, or was all by the director's idea?
The main idea for that scene was the director's. The difficulty of that scene is that, you know, the old man has to lose, but he can't really lose. It's not really about fighting. It's about the overall story, about how, you know, it's very well known amongst Chinese that Chinese kind of fight each other all the time. So, you know, how do you win against somebody and yet not humiliate them? How do you win and still stay as a whole? So it became this metaphor. The breaking the cake, the bread was a sort of metaphor. I have no idea when they came up with that, but it seemed like to come out of nowhere, because there were all kinds of ideas about how to shoot that concept, and he just sort of made this decision, and we went with it. And then he told the choreographers to do this and that, and they came up with a way to shoot it.
So the choreographer team needs to help to make this movement to come out, no?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I would say for that particular scene, there was only maybe a little bit of input from us as far as Wing Chun, because, you know, the hands have to look sort of right. When there's an overhead shot and you can see them running around, I mean, you know, let's be realistic. If you want to take the cake, you're going to do it a different way, right? So it has to be Wing Chun like, and the other guy has to be like Xing Yi like, and it has to look good, and there's some ballet to it. But you know, the hands, the most involvement I had was maybe one or two ways of positioning the hands and actually doubling the hand. You know, because you know, when you take the cake, a couple of those shots are actually my hand, and it was just easier to have me do it. And you know, the director wanted it to feel right.
Thank you.
And how do you compare training an actor versus training a regular student?
That's pretty tough, because I think in this case, well, just put it this way: when you train a regular student, usually the student comes to you and he's very enthusiastic about learning Wing Chun. He's not learning it for a movie. He's learning it because, well, you know, he's really fascinated about Wing Chun, or he saw something that drew him into the art. Versus saying, okay, I'm using it as a stepping stone to something else. So the mindset is a little bit different.
Okay, thank you.